everyone. Welcome to another episode of Meet the Author for Rising Relentlessly. Today we have Leonardo, one of the two guys that showed up with their voices to be amplified in this book. And I am so excited to be able to get yet another male perspective on saying yes to telling your story. So I'm so excited. Leonardo, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, hi, I'm Leonardo Zapien, and I'm one of the writers here, and I live in Colorado.
Yep, another Coloradan. There's about what, four of us in this book that are in Colorado. So it's a
Yeah.
very special book curated by those of us that are, we live around each other. So that's really exciting. I would love to start off by asking you what inspired you to say yes to sharing your story in this anthology.
Well, I have a good friend named Michelle. She was in Rooted to Rise, and I met her, and she kind of told me about the process of how much fun she had, and we had her a party, and it just came naturally. You and I just connected, and you said you wanted me to be on your book, so I said okay, and it was that simple.
It
Really.
was that simple. Yeah, I was so excited. You were the first yes we got to this next book. So super exciting. Well, with that, you said yes, but then reality kicks in, right? So before writing and getting ready to share your story, were there any fears or hesitations that you had about telling your story publicly?
Well, for like I said, the connection that we had through Michelle, she was getting ready to do a book release. So I just felt so excited for her, you know. So I already knew what kind of entailed, not to the detail, because the writing was pretty difficult to sometimes dive into and then read it and then go back and then want to put it out there. And it gets a little tricky, confusing, intimidating. A lot of emotions go into writing a book, and you want to get feedback, but then you don't want to put it out there. It's pretty special. So I knew there was going to be some humps in there.
Good. Well, I'm glad you just did it anyways. You just kept finding your brave through it all. How did the
Right.
writing process surprise you?
How did the process,
Mhm.
the writing process, what?
How did the writing process surprise you?
Oh, the writing process. Oh, wow. That had so many different surprises from so many different levels. The writing process, when you start, you think of it, okay, it's going to be really easy. And it does sometimes come out easy, but then that easiness, when you reread it, you go back and wow, it's just so many levels of writing that you get into. And then when you're really deep into it and you start proofreading from the beginning, now you have a whole story. So it's different from the beginning to where the middle you're trying to decide how you want to end it, and to the end when you just read it, it's just so many different paths you could take. So you just have to be, I think, just natural.
Exactly. And I know that you wrote a few versions of it. So I'm really excited where you landed with it because your story is one of those ones that so many of us that can relate to, Gen X, we can just like really dive into where the plant was as we were growing up and where it's become and how it's evolved in acceptance, but there's still that stigma and all of that with it. So with that, what part of your story was the hardest part to write and why? Why was it hard?
I think the hardest part of it was really deciding what you wanted to put on there and share from yourself. That is the hardest part because you know it's going to be read worldwide. uh, Being a published author, you know, so your peers are going to read it, and your kids, you know what I mean? So people that you work with. So those decisions come into play. And I think that's pretty difficult to, especially with marijuana, you know, you want to, people do, like you said, have a stigma about it. And we're all aware of that, but our generation, we grew up with it, and there was no cell phones and there was no internet. So we got two different types of feel of it, of how it was back in when we started, when we were young in elementary. and the stigma and the people who were around it and what really people thought about who smoked it. And then when it just became popular and it changed and it started to become a cultural, natural thing, it's just an evolution. And I kind of want to portray that in this book of how it evolved and how it is now. So
Yeah, I think your story does such a great job of sharing like the real and the rawness and coming from a perspective of it being a part of your life for such a long time. It wasn't like, oh, I heard about this CBD stuff or whatever. It was like different parts of the plant that have been a part of your life. And so, with that, while you were writing your story, was there a moment during the writing where something just kind of clicked or shifted in you personally? While you were sharing all of that history that you were talking about and that you share in your chapter?
yeah, well, of course, we're all unique. So each story is normally unique, you know.
Mhm.
So we're all different people, but as far as the message and what everybody is trying to bring into the book, I really thought I stayed away from that because I wanted to just come out natural without other authors or the previous book also kind of like persuading me or kind of like guiding me of what to write. I just wanted to put mine out there just so it could be totally different and just throw the book off because I mean, your publishing company is about opening minds and it's about getting other authors that want to put the time in that are hesitant or don't have guidance. What with here with you guys being the publishers is such a great thing because the support and the guidance there at every moment. So and you could feel the appreciation and the love and the comprehension, of the process of writing a book. Like you asked at the beginning how it felt to be chosen. Well, not having experience, you're going into that, and to have a support team like you guys is awesome, and to explore your writing skills pretty much.
I love that. Thank you. How did the support and like all the prompts we gave you and the community structure, especially in an anthology, you weren't alone. So we had like, gatherings every month. We have our Facebook chat, all the things. How did that support you through this process?
I'm gonna say like encouragement. You guys, you James, Ashley, you guys really came out and given that feedback and of what it makes you feel is such a confidence booster, because you kind of go down on yourself, just like everybody, we all come down, especially when we're putting ourselves out there, it's very difficult. So to have feedback from you guys and be like, hey, this is what I was getting from it, man. That is so cool, and you didn't think that it was cool. And to have somebody say that is really, it really lifts up your spirits and yeah, it encourages you. So
I
that's what
love that. I could not stop reading your chapter. I was like totally hooked. Sometimes when you read things, you kind of like, get distracted or whatever. I was hooked from like the first word to the very last word. And I was like, what happens next? What happens next? And I love that you wrote your chapter so people can really get to know all of you in terms of this part of your life. And it brings aspects of dealing with stigmas and the reality of everything from a perspective that we've never had in any of these chapters. And I love that your chapter stands out as a different level of empowering. And I know that your message a lot of times is also to just really support like the youth and support other people that might be in similar spaces that you're in. And so, with that, surely you learned something about yourself writing this chapter. What was that? What did you learn about yourself?
wow, that's a good question. Um, and I think so. What I really learned is that perseverance, and you getting that feedback from when you write it down, because it seemed like my story really went from an era to another era. So it was a generation pretty much, that I'm telling you about. That was pretty much like PG 13, because I mean, there's it just goes so deeper, but we're not going to get into that part. Maybe in another book or something. But um, actually, just going into it was like really, really something where it was just captivating to really realize what you put down on paper and then reflect on your life. It's just like wow, that's inspiring. There, it's like real shock, to have lived that and to like you think about it, putting it all together in a memoir, pretty much, because that's what books are, right? Memoirs, memories, right? Or just So it was cool.
I love that. So, what do you hope others will take from your chapter? I know that we like want the messages to hit people the way that they need to hit people, but what do you hope people will take away from the vulnerability and the authenticity of your chapter?
Yeah, that my story was about how I dealt with things and how it really is a presence of it in your life and how are you going to deal with it and the choices that you make are still you're still going to be a good person, you're still going to be able to succeed and there's other worse drugs that you don't want to get into, but marijuana being considered and being kind of also labeled as a dangerous, not dangerous, helpful drug. It's an experimental one, and your own journey of how you can still be able to make your own decisions on your own with your own experiences just by looking back at somebody else's.
Yeah, I love that. The reflection piece is huge. So, how is being part of a collective book rather than writing alone shape your experience? So, tell us about what it was like to be in an anthology with other people.
That's easy. That's easy. Okay, so that's kind of where you see like all the authors. They're like, "Oh, I was scared. I was nervous. I haven't been able to write." And then you compare to what you've been going through, so you're like, "Oh, this is all normal." So it's pretty easy. You get to relate the process of how what everybody else and how everybody else is doing and coming up with the ideas and the encouragement. So it that's very, very, very helpful. So you would think that the experience would get you to be able to write on your own.
Mhm.
And I guess that's kind of what you guys are trying to teach, and guide and help being the publisher. So
Oh, thank you. If someone is listening to this and they're unsure about telling their story, what would you want them to know after you had your experience?
well, of course, legacy, legacy. You're leaving something behind that people can go back and read for generations to come, so that you're actually putting a footprint a mark in earth, in your life, in life itself, that hey, at least I wanted somebody to read that. So I think that right there is something special.
I love that. I love the analogy of a footprint because you're leaving a positive footprint on this world, right?
Yeah, yeah,
By
yeah.
sharing your story. I know that reading your chapter and without going into like huge descriptions or anything like that, because they need to read it. We don't want to give too many
Right.
spoilers away. But it started when you were a teenager. And so what I love to ask is now that you've been all these years, you've written about it, all of the things. What would you tell teenager Leonardo about anything really in particular that deals with this subject? What would you tell a younger you?
About cannabis, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. I would say stay away from it. Um, Let it be something that you experiment on your own without peer pressure and be comfortable enough to stay away and understand that other people are going to be around it because the culture here is about marijuana sometimes, even if we don't think so, but it's everywhere. And of course, it goes into harder. drugs, but enjoy how you want to live and don't feel pressured by anybody or anything or any video or anything. Just be comfortable with yourself, and if you could stay away from it, stay away from it. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all this time. Thank you for sharing your words and your spirit. And for everybody who's watching and listening, we're going to have all the ways you can connect with Leonardo.
Cool.
And it'll just be an exciting time. If his chapter really resonates and you want to connect with him, please reach out to him and all the resources that we have below. So thank you so much for saying yes, Leonardo. And we're
Thank
excited for the
you.
book
Thank
release.
you guys.
April 22nd is the official release. And we just wanted to say thank you to everyone listening and watching. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.